Hello, hello. This is CRP speaking to you live on today, Sunday, September 12th, 2021. Yeah, I'm talking to you unusually from my apartment, from my kitchen, as a matter of fact, because there's like some issue with the internet in my office. And so I had to just move everything over here. And so I'll be doing it here from my kitchen. And this is unusually, I'm posting this both on Patreon and on my public CRP channel, because for two reasons. Number one, I think that it's of public interest. And so I think that a lot of people who are on my public channel will get a lot out of it. And number two, quite frankly, I'm trying to shill my Patreon channel. So if you're not a member, please go to the link below in the description. I have like close to 200 pieces of content between videos and webinars. This is, as you can see, it's the 76th weekly webinar that I have. And I have, actually, I have something like 160 original videos that you'll find nowhere else. So go check it out. Yeah, and please subscribe. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about climate change. Climate change and the recent report of the Intergovernmental Panel. It released the 6th assessment report, which is basically, it's not original research. It's rather sort of like an aggregation of all the current research, the most mainstream, okay? And despite all the bullshit hype that you've heard, if you actually look at the report, you'll realize that it is, how shall we put it? Well, you know, it's not what it's cracked up to be, okay? So hang on, let me I put the link there below to the actual report on Patreon. It's actually in the post on Patreon announcing this webinar with the link to this webinar. And for you guys on the free channel, it's in the description box below. Go to that report. Incredibly long, but the important bit is the first few pages, the executive summary. I'm going to be referencing that executive summary and discussing some of the findings in it. Okay. Spoiler alert, you know, the earth is not ending tomorrow. Life as we know it is not going to just disappear. You know, all the coastlines of the world will not vanish with the melting ice caps or any bullshit like that. When you actually start looking at the numbers, oh God, you just want to groan. And again, spoiler alert, bottom line, the climate change hysteria is just lies and twisted science. The twisted science is being used to push certain political goals and certain financial goals, which I actually know quite a bit about, and I'll be happy to tell you about them when we get to that section. And ultimately, it's just a big old scam. It's bullshit. It's a lie. It's another lie. And what's crucial here is that it's using science, once again, to push something that is blatantly not true. And it's not that the information I'm going to present to you here is information that I pulled out of my ass. No, the information, all of the information in this presentation that I'm going to give you now comes straight from this 6th assessment, okay? I'm not making up anything. I'm not going to alternative sources or any bullshit like that. This is straight from you read the report carefully and you assess what's going on and you're like, dude, we're going to twist our world and turn it upside down over this? Come on. You see what I'm saying? It's just a big old scam. So enough of my yapping, you know, and you guys don't need to see my ugly mug. Oh, as usual, you know, you guys, I'm always paranoid as to whether you guys can hear me properly or not. So guys on the CRP channel, the free channel, hit me with a +1. And guys on the Patreon channel, hit me with a +9 to ensure that you guys can hear me properly. Okay, you can hear and see everything properly. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'll wait for the chat to catch up. I'm sure it'll catch up fine. And so let's get cracking. Okay, so the first thing, thanks guys, I appreciate it. The first thing you guys have got to understand is when it comes to climate change, there are 4 questions that you have to ask. And these are 4 simple questions. Remember, you know, something I always emphasize. You always have to go for the simple question, not the complicated question, the simple question. And if the question that you come up with in your head is like complicated or has several parts, break it down into the simplest parts. Instead of having one really long and complicated question, have 2 or 3 or 4 simple questions. Because when you have a simple question and you stick to it, it's the easiest and quickest way to cut through the bullshit, okay? Okay, so the 4 questions that we have to ask ourselves is, number 1, is climate change happening? That's the first question. Is it happening or not? Number 2, is climate change solely the product of human industrial activity, or are there other factors? 3, if climate change is occurring, is it catastrophic, requiring immediate human intervention and or restriction of human activity? And finally, number 4, if climate change is occurring, could it be potentially good in terms of creating more available room for expansion of the biosphere? By the way, the 4th question, that's the radioactive question. That's the one that if you flick it at Greta Thunberg or any of these climate change people, they will freak the fuck out. Because, of course, the answer to that is yes. See? Warmer climates, smaller glaciers and smaller areas covered by ice would actually be beneficial to the Earth, okay? It would create more biodiversity, and more land areas would become, you'd be able to farm on them, okay? Vast swaths of the northern tundras in Russia and Alaska and Canada would become habitable, would become easily habitable and farmable, okay? And that is the one question that really flips out the climate change people, especially the smarter ones. The dumber ones don't get the implications. The smarter ones do, and it freaks them the fuck out, okay? Yeah, so those are the 4 questions that we have to keep in mind as we march through this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which released its 6th assessment report. Okay, the 5th one was back in 2012. Okay, now the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is a United Nations body. It brings together the governmental agencies of the various member nations and helps them assess the current state of information insofar as climate change is concerned, or alleged climate change, okay? And as we'll see, climate change is happening, but this is not important. But let me phrase that. It is important, but rather it's quotidian, it's trivial. Climate always changes. It always has and always will, okay? But we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, the IPCC is a UN body. It doesn't do original research. It's an aggregator. And the whole point of it is to give as sober and realistic assessment as possible with regards to the data, okay? It is the gold standard on mainstream climate change, okay? This is it. This report, and produced by this government, this United Nations body, this is the gold standard, okay? And the charts I'm going to show you, well, the 2 principal ones that I will show you and the information that I will show you, it all comes from this report. There will be a couple of other charts that I'll show you that come from outside sources, but they're unimpeachable and they're non-controversial, okay? So you got to keep this in mind. This is it. This is the gold standard, okay? Now, the key points of the 6th assessment. Now, those reference points are for the executive summary at the beginning of the report. You have it linked there. And the key issue, hang on, let me just find where I wrote down the thing. On paragraph A.1.2, it says global surface temperatures global surface temperature was 1.09, a range between 0.95 to 1.2 degrees Celsius higher in 2011, 2020 than in the period 1850 to 1900, with larger increases over land than over the ocean. The estimated increase in global surface temperature since the assessment report number 5 is principally due to further warming since 2003-2012, estimated at 0.19 the mean that is between 0.16 and 0.22 degrees Celsius. Additionally, methodological advances and new data sets contributed approximately 0.1 degrees Celsius to the updated estimate of warming in the AR6, that is the current report. That's a direct quote from the report. What does that basically mean? Well, it means that the best estimate is that between the periods 1850 to 1900, that 50-year period, and 2010 to 2019, the last 10 years roughly, human-caused surface temperature rose 1.09 degrees Celsius. Understand what that means. The average between the 50 years of 1850 to 1900, it rose from that standard 1.09 degrees Celsius. That's the best estimate. Okay? That's it. That's all it rose. Okay. This basic information is divvied up between paragraphs A.1.2 and A.1.3. Okay. Now, actually, now that I think about it, I'm not going to bother reading each of the paragraphs because you got the text in front of you. I'm going to give you the basic summary of these points because it's easier and quicker. Okay. Basically, in A.1.7, the global mean sea level rose 20 centimeters between 1901 and 2018. 20 centimeters is 8 inches. It seems, according to the data, and I'll read the pertinent paragraph, it seems that as of late that might be increasing. The pertinent line is the average rate of sea level rise was 1.3 millimeters per year between 1901 and 1971, increasing to 1.9 millimeters per year between 1971 and 2006, and further increasing to 3.7 millimeters per year between 2006 and 2018. Okay? I mean, okay, so it rose per year 3.7 millimeters. Okay? 3.7 millimeters over 10 years is, of course, 3.7 centimeters, which is roughly 1.5 inches. And that's the accelerated, okay? And that's just a period of 10 years, which is relatively little, okay? So it's like, okay, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, I don't think that much of human civilization is going to drown in 1.5 inches of sea level rise. Or am I wrong? I don't know. You guys tell me. Anyway, paragraph A.2.3, quote, in 2011-2020, annual average Arctic sea ice area reached its lowest level since at least 1850, with a high confidence of that. Late summer Arctic sea ice area was smaller than at any time in at least the past 1,000 years, medium confidence. The global nature of glacier retreat, with almost all of the world's glaciers retreating synchronously, since the 1950s, is unprecedented in at least the last 2,000 years, medium confidence. Okay, now what does that mean? It means that the glaciers are at the lowest point since 1850. They're just retreating all over the place. And do keep in mind that Antarctica, which is, of course, the granddaddy of them all insofar as glaciers and ice and all the rest of it, well, it's a desert. Why is it a desert? Well, because it's covered in glaciers. That's the point, see? Because a desert is not just sand. A desert is a place where no life can grow, see? And glaciers, pretty though they may be, they're actually not good because if there's a glacier, nothing can grow underneath it. Very few types of living beings can flourish on a glacier. In fact, none can insofar as flora and fauna, flora is concerned. And insofar as fauna, well, you got pelicans and you got, polar bears. And that'll be it. Okay? Okay, let's move on. Point B.1. Global surface temperature will continue to increase until at least the mid-century under all emissions scenarios considered. Okay, parenthetically, Later on in this report, they give various scenarios of flatlining the CO2 emissions from human beings all the way to doubling the amount of CO2 emissions, so as to give the different possibilities, different scenarios as to likely outcomes of the whole global warming thing, of the whole CO2 thing, rather. Excuse me. Okay, so global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius will be exceeded during the 21st century unless deep reductions in CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming decades. What does that mean? Well, it means that the global surface temperatures are going to continue to increase throughout the century, with at best an increase of 1.4 degrees Celsius by 2100. That is, if we do everything right, everything perfect, and reduce all CO2 emissions, like flicking a switch, global surface temperatures will increase by only 1.4 degrees Celsius by 2100. Okay. And what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario, I'm sort of like advancing you a little bit, and I'm spoiling a little bit the data you're going to see in a little bit. 4.4 degrees Celsius by 2100. That's the worst case scenario. That's where CO2 emissions double. They double, and therefore global surface temperatures increase to by 4.4 degrees Celsius by 2100. Okay. Point B, point 2.4. It is very likely that heavy precipitation events will intensify and become more frequent in most regions with additional global warming. At the global scale, extreme daily precipitation events are projected to intensify by about 7% for each 1 degree Celsius of global warming. High confidence. That seems pretty straightforward. More precipitation events are going to happen. It's going to increase by 7% for every 1 degree Celsius of global temperature rise. How is that a bad thing? I mean, seriously, it's not a facetious question. See, one of the problems that we currently have is, global aquifers have less water, less fresh water. And fresh water composes a minuscule amount of the water in the world. The water in the world is of course, full of, apart from living organisms and whatnot, it's full of salt. Okay, it's undrinkable. And to desalinate water is exceedingly difficult. So how exactly would more precipitation be a bad thing? Because more precipitation would mean, of course, more fresh water, because what happens is with higher temperature, there's more evaporation of water, and the evaporated water does not carry the microorganisms and other debris, as well as the salt in seawater. It just carries up the water vapor, and that water vapor becomes rain. Rain is drinkable. Rain nourishes life. So how is this bad that there will be more precipitation events? By the way, they go on and on about this, okay? I'm just highlighting the points, but they go on and on in the report to talk about more cyclones, more hurricanes. And the obvious question is, why is this a bad thing? Ask yourself, why would we want less rainwater? Wouldn't we want more? I mean, especially considering the fact that, in the western states in the United States, for instance, is happening in a lot of places, there is a major drought going on. I mean, one would want more rain to fall so as to, have a bump in so far as available fresh water, right? Same is happening in northern India. So how exactly is more precipitation a bad thing? Inquiring minds want to know. Finally, point 5.3. Point B, point 5.3. It is virtually certain that global mean sea levels will continue to rise over the 21st century. Relative to 1995 to 2014, the likely global mean sea level rise by 2100 is 0.28 to 0.55 meters under the very low GHG emission scenario. And the high scenario, let me find it. I don't want to read the whole fucking thing. The highest scenario is 0.98 to 1.88 meters under the very high scenario. That's medium confidence. The very high scenario is basically doubling CO2 emissions. Okay? That it will rise between 1 and 1.88 meters. And that's the absolute worst. Okay? Now, 2100, 80 years away, global sea levels will rise between 28 centimeters and 55 centimeters, the low end, or 98 centimeters and 188 centimeters. That's the worst case. And the medium is going to be somewhere in the middle. If you look there, the mid-range one is suitably vague. It's between 0.37 meters and 0.86 meters. That is roughly a foot and 4 inches and just shy of 3 feet. Actually, closer to 2 feet 7. Okay, so those are the worst case scenarios, and the medium is going to be between like a foot and 2.5 feet. That's the likely outcome. The median. Okay, this is what the report is saying. These data points that I've outlined, they're fairly dry, but this is this is it. This is all it's saying. That in 80 years. The surface temperature might rise like a degree. In 80 years, the glaciers are going to be retreating as never before, and this will mean, of course, more arable land and more life, more space for the biosphere to expand. And the worst you can say is that global sea levels might rise, worst case scenario, by almost 2 meters, 6 feet. Although, of course, you have to realize that insofar as the tides are concerned, in a lot of the major ports around the world, the difference between the daily low tide and high tide is actually greater than that. So, it's not going to be that big of a fucking deal. I mean, it really isn't. So, why are we having a hysteric over this shit? That's the obvious question. I mean, I'll ask you, Chad. I mean, why do you think we're having a hysteric? Why do you think everybody's like freaking out? In this report, the phrase was not used, but in the by the spokespeople of the IPCC, they said, that this is like the red alert for humanity. No one is safe. But you look at the actual data that they are presenting, and it's not that fucking big of a deal. I mean, it's really not. Oh, somebody's saying here that I should stop trying to act cool. That's interesting. And their comment disappeared. Wait, let me find it. Where did it go? This was really interesting. Somebody doesn't want. I'm guessing somebody does not like the fact of me looking through this report. Okay. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make. See, you're looking at the worst case scenario from the report itself, and it's not that fucking big of a deal. It just really isn't. And anybody claiming otherwise is just, they're lying. They're twisting science in order to pursue an agenda. Yeah. It's hang on. Matt Muncy has here, and I'll just put it there. It's an opportunity to remake the world in the image of the Davos bankers. Well, it's not so much the Davos bankers. It's these tryhards. And I'll get to that, to the motivation, just a little bit. But I just want to make it clear to you guys that, all the scaremongering that the world is ending, it's bullshit. I mean, it really is bullshit, and by their own numbers, okay? The thing is, see, a lot of times you don't realize it's bullshit because the numbers seem really scary. For instance, you tell people that sea levels are going to rise, 2 meters, 6 feet. And, holy shit, that's going to be horrible. What's going to happen to Miami and shit? Well, fucking nothing is going to happen. Because already the tides rise quite a bit. Okay. And these are projections. Projections where even they themselves say, data, well, they're not really sure about it. See? So in the end, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that's the point. They're not talking about anything accept catastrophism to make you do what they want you to do. Okay. Now, here are, a couple of charts that are in the report, in the executive summary of the report. I didn't bother going through the whole fucking thing. It's like 3,000 pages, right? But it's really interesting. Look at the first one on your left there, if you don't mind, right? You look at it on your left, and the one on the left and the far left, of course, it says there, if it's too small for you, I'll just read it for you. It's human influence has warmed the climate at a rate that is unprecedented in the last 2,000 years. Okay? And see, it gives you like ranges of climate, and then it shows you like a hockey stick just rising up to infinity right now, as we're speaking. Now, just looking at that graph, you know it's bullshit. You just know it's bullshit. Why? Because there's no variance in the previous 2,000 years. Because the graph goes from the year 1 to the year 2020. And in the last 150 years, 170 years, 1850 to 2020, you see this sudden hockey stick, peaking up like crazy. But the other data fluctuates very little, between 0 and roughly the average is between, I would say, roughly 0.25, 0.2, maybe 0.15 to 0.25, something like that. It dances around as normal. But these are historical reconstructions, and you know that that's not accurate. You know it's not accurate because it's not including, for instance, the Little Ice Age. The Little Ice Age was a period during the Middle Ages when there was an unprecedented freeze throughout the northern hemisphere, and likely the southern hemisphere as well. There hasn't been enough data and enough points to corroborate that. And the Little Ice Age, if you go on Wikipedia, they've altered it so that they say that it only happened in Europe, because it's indisputable that it happened in Europe. Why? Well, because in the year 1066 in London, in the UK, you could grow grapes in order to make wine. But then by the time of Shakespeare in the late 16th century, you could no longer grow wine. And in fact, you couldn't, because it was so cold that the Thames River froze solid. And there are paintings of people ice skating on the Thames, and shops, little shacks really, selling different things to passersby as they cross the Thames. Because why bother going to the bridge when you could just cross over the ice? You see? And that's historically true. And of course, today, the Thames River never freezes over. See? They neglected to include that very simple and obvious truth in this data reconstruction. And so you know that they're pulling a fast one on you. If you didn't know this very simple and undeniable truth about climate and the climate of the past, you'd look at that and you'd be like, oh my God, that's horrible. Look at that. Look, everything was so steady. So steady. Remember that word. Everything was so steady. And then all of a sudden it jumped up. Same with chart B, which is change in global surface temperature, annual average, as observed and simulated using human and natural and only natural factors, both 1850 to 2020. And again, everything looks very steady until lately. Now, this is a key issue, and you're going to realize something very crucial that I want you to burn into your head. The climate change people, the people who have bought into this ideology, are exceptionally conservative. And you're going to say, like, CRP, what the fuck you talking about, bitch? They aren't conservative. They're fucking commies, right? They're watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside, right? Wrong. They're conservative, but not in the political sense. I mean, these fuckers are baby killers and all the rest of it, and they give a shit they care more about the fucking pandas than about their fellow human beings, right? That's undeniable, but these fuckers are conservative in the sense that they want everything to be the same forever. They cannot stand change. They cannot accept change. Then they cannot accept that the past might have been radically different from the present. They can't accept that. They are completely conservative. And the funny thing is that if you start to realize it, what it is, it's the conservatism of children. Because have you ever noticed small children, you know, toddlers, and your children are under the age of 12? They don't take very well to change. They hate change. They don't like change at all. And they throw a tantrum whenever you change their routine. And I've got small children. And so I know if you change their routine, they freak out, okay? Because they need predictability, stability, the routine, okay? If you're going to change their routine, you have to give them a good warning, okay? My small children now are 6 and 8, and so it's not that big of a deal. But when they were younger, when they were like, say, 2 and 4 or 3 and 5, holy shit. You know, one little deviation from their routine, they'd have like a mini tantrum, for crying out loud. Yeah. You had to like ease into it and explain that there was going to be a little change, because children are like that. Immature people are like that. Climate change people are like that. And so they don't want to accept, and in fact cannot accept, that the past was very different from the present. And so they look at that steadiness in the lines and they're like, oh yeah, that's how it was. No, it wasn't. That line, or those lines rather, that indicate the climate in the past, they were dancing all over the place. And see, these two charts that I'm showing you on screen right now, these are the charts, especially the left ones. The left ones, I want you to focus on the left ones for a moment, and I'll get to the right ones, the one on the right in just a moment. The one on the left, see, that steadiness, it's incorrect. I don't need to even look it up to know that it's incorrect, because temperatures have changed radically and they've gone up and down all over the fucking place. Okay. And so what's going on here is an emotional need for unchangingness. You see what's going on here? They don't give a shit about life because, like I said before, the obvious, if the global temperatures rise, the biosphere will expand. It will expand at the expense of the desert regions covered by glaciers and ice. This would be a good thing. The biodiversity, the biosphere would expand because of it. So you see the problem here. They are thinking that they want the world unchanging forever. It is the conservatism of immature people. Understand what's going on. You got to understand these climate change people, see? Because it's not enough to just shit on them. It's not enough to say that they're fucking commies. Yes, you can shit on them and make fun of them. Yes, Greta Thunberg, likely the child of alcoholic parents, you know, the fetal alcohol syndrome, it's written all over her little face. And the fact that her face is a little bit too small for the size of her head, and the fact that her upper lip, there are no dimples, that she has a straight upper lip, fetal alcohol syndrome. A friend of mine who's a doctor, who's actually had to deal with fetal alcohol syndrome in his practice, he looked at her for the first time having no idea who she was, and he said, oh, this girl is a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. That's a shame. Poor thing. She must be slightly retarded. Because I would say, well, yeah, it's all good and fine to laugh at these people, but it's important that you understand what they're coming from. They are immature people who cannot stand change. Now, let's go on to the chart on the right. In this report, in this assessment, they talk about various scenarios. And the chart here on the right is future emissions cause future additional warming, with total warming dominated by past and future CO2 emissions. Okay. Now, you're going to see there from the starting point in 2015, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different curves. And these different curves labeled SSPS 8.5, SSP5 at 8.3. I don't know why the fuck they make it so complicated, but they do. These are essentially 4 different projections insofar as CO2 emissions are concerned. Okay, that's the important thing. And these are, as you can see, starting from the same origin point in 2014, estimates of carbon emissions. And the most radical ones are basically zero emissions. Okay, now these projections, okay, these are the different scenarios that are going to come into play in just a little bit, and let me get to them right now. Okay, so as you saw in the previous one, SSP1 to 1.9, that is the best case scenario. The best case scenario where CO2 is zero worldwide. Politically and technologically, it's not actually possible, okay? But let's just posit it, okay? Because of course, politically it's not possible because you need to get every single country in the world to agree to zero emissions. And technologically it's not possible because the renewable energies, i.e. green energies, do not produce enough energy for all humanity's needs, energy needs. Okay, the only thing that would provide such a possibility would be nuclear, but these fucking nutcases are against nuclear. I am actually against nuclear, but for radically different reasons. Okay, because I think that nuclear is very bad if our civilization goes down the tubes, because a nuclear reactor is exceedingly dangerous. And if you have, lesser people, incompetent people, people who don't know what they're doing, managing such very dangerous technologies, you can have a whole bunch of Chernobyls all over the fucking planet, and God creating and causing God knows what kind of havoc. And you don't want that. And that's why I'm against it. These guys are against it. I don't actually know why. And I don't think that they know either, because nuclear is the greenest energy possible. But they're against it, and they want wind turbines and solar and all this bullshit. And I'll get to that in a moment because I have a little bit of insight in that because I worked in that fucking industry. So I can tell you it's all bullshit, but we'll get to that in just a moment. First, the scenario. These are the 5 scenarios, okay? The top one is the best case. The bottom one is the worst case. Now, what's important is the second to last column to your right. The long-term, 2081 to 2100, those are the years, right? The best estimate in the rise of the surface temperature. Best case, it's 1.4 degrees, okay? Worst case, it's 4.4 degrees. That's the absolute worst case. That's like an environmental apocalypse. Global surface temperatures rise by 4.4 degrees. And the fact of the matter is, global temperatures have risen by shitloads more than that. They have. In the past, no question. By the examples I gave you of just London, okay? In London, when William the Conqueror arrived, they had vineyards in the fucking city, or the fucking town, as the case was at that time. And by the late 16th century, the Thames River had frozen over, and there hadn't been any wine production in over a century. Things change all over the fucking place. And they change drastically. 4.4 degrees is nothing. It's insignificant. And that's the worst case scenario. Okay? And people want to say that, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. And by their own admission, if surface temperatures were to rise by 4.4 degrees on average, that would increase precipitation by about 30%. 30% would mean that the amount of available fresh water would increase dramatically. And because there would be so much CO2 in the atmosphere, the biosphere would flourish. That's from their own fucking statistics. Okay? I'm not making any fucking thing up. Okay, let's move on. Now, climate change. Here's another problem here. Okay? They talk about how carbon emissions, they're going to continue to rise. We need zero emissions, or if we get like double what we have today, it'll be horrible, blah, 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 right? Well, what's happened to carbon emissions from 1975 to 2020? That's the past 45 years. Well, they ballooned, and then they came down quite a bit, okay? And they ballooned for different historical reasons. I tried to get the similar chart from the EU, but I had to pay, and I was unwilling to pay for it, from Statista. You can look it up if you want to. The European Union figures are pretty much the same as this. Okay, so it's sort of like CO2 emissions ballooned and then they decreased. And none of the decrease was because of governmental regulation and greater efficiency in the manufacturing processes and also in automobiles and engines and whatnot. So part of it, yeah, granted, sure, yes, was because of government regulation. But it wasn't so onerous as to destroy or cripple any industry. It was just, a slightly added tax. It was marginal. It was measured and reasonable. And some of us might not have liked it. Some of us did. It didn't really matter. In the end, it was a minor expense that did significantly reduce CO2 emissions in the UK and also in the European Union. What's going on now? Now, this is data from 2014, okay? In 2014, the emissions from fossil fuel combustion and some industrial processes were divided up as follows. 30% were coming from China, 15% from the US, 9% from the EU, 7% from India, 5% from Russia, and 4% from Japan. The remaining 30% were from, the usual suspects, Latin America and Africa and all the smaller countries, the poor countries that don't have the ability or the means to put all kinds of environmental regulations, right? But the big culprit here, of course, was China. They accounted for roughly a third of global CO2 emissions. And this was in 2014, coming up on 7 years ago. Now it's probably a lot worse. I mean, indisputably, it's a lot worse. And so the issue becomes not the EU, not Europe, not the developed nations of Australia, New Zealand, and some of the more advanced countries in Latin America. No, it comes from China and the poor countries. They're the ones who are causing the problem insofar as CO2 emissions, because it's coming from there, not from the rich countries. The rich countries have already implemented these measured, reasonable measures of slight expense that have significantly reduced CO2. But China and the underdeveloped countries have not. And between those two, we're talking about 60% of the whole pie of CO2 emissions. So what's the point of the West making all of this effort, this very expensive effort, these green projects and all the rest of this shit? Now, there was one fucking idea floating around Davos of spending $90 trillion, you heard that right, $90 trillion to make cities in the West car-free. 90 trillion, that is 90 million millions. That's what 90 trillion is. I mean, it's indescribable amount of money, huh? And somebody was seriously floating this stupid idea around, huh? Which goes to show you that it's bullshit. But there's a reason behind it, and I'll get to that in a second, okay? So anyway, the real culprits of CO2 emissions are China and the underdeveloped countries, not the West, okay? Now, so let's bottom line this whole fucking situation. Number one, climate change is happening, but it's inconsequential. I mean, we saw the report. It's inconsequential. And to pretend otherwise, you're just fooling yourself, okay? Climate change hysteria is not commensurate with what is actually happening. Mm-hmm. If you're saying that in 80 years, in an absolutely worst case scenario, the global temperatures will rise by 4.4 degrees Celsius, and the oceans will rise by between 3 and 6 feet, this is trivial in the scheme of things. It really is, okay? And to claim otherwise and say that this is a catastrophe, it's not true. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Ocean tides are greater than this rise. It's not commensurate, the climate hysteria that is occurring now. And parenthetically, of course, I have to emphasize this. Guys who are older, like my age, guys who lived through the 70s, the early 70s and into the early 80s, we all remember when there was all this hysteria about global freezing, not warming, freezing. And everybody was talking about snowball Earth, and everybody was terrified that the Earth was cooling, and it was cooling so fast that the whole thing was going to become like an ice planet, like fucking Venus, or no, not Venus, the other ones, the gas giants, just a snowball. Everybody was fucking terrified of this shit. It was the fear porn of the 70s. Yeah. And sometimes in the 1980s, it flipped around. It became global warming. But I fucking remember during the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, global cooling was what was freaking everybody out. And you have now like a bunch of people like Bill Gates, for instance, he's actually been thinking or throwing money at artificially cooling the planet, which is fucking insane. But, this is the level of these fucking people. Huh? Okay. Even in the best case scenario, global temperatures will rise 1.4 degrees Celsius by 2020. Now, that rise 1.4 degrees Celsius, if you're eliminating human intervention, that's the best case scenario, then you're talking about volcanoes and sun cycles. So whatever way you're looking at it, the Earth's temperature is rising. It doesn't have anything to do with people. It's just rising anyway, very slowly, extremely slowly. I mean, come on, 1.8 degrees Celsius in 80 years' time. One has to wonder whether that measurement is accurate or not, because it is so small. Then you have to ask that obvious question. I mean, is this real? I mean, are you really, saying that that's going to happen? Okay, whatever the fuck. But you see my point, okay? And the worst case scenario, even if CO2 emissions doubled, the global temperature will rise by only 4.4 degrees Celsius. It's trivial. It's trivial. The cost to go zero emission would be astronomical. And as I explained, neither technically nor politically possible. I mean, think of it. Think of everything that would have to be shut down, permanently shut down. Not just every car, but every single power station in the world that burns anything. Okay? That would be crazy. That would be absolutely insane. But that's the goal of these people, okay? So what's the deal? What's really going on here? Well, it's very simple. See, climate change hysteria creates political energy, which translates into votes. It's fear. Fear drives people. If I tell you that, we have to be moderate and we have to conserve energy, and we should conserve the environment, and the little pandas and animals and shit like that, we should conserve them, you're going to nod and be like, yeah, you're right. But if I say, hey, we got to stop climate change. If we don't stop climate change, we're going to drown. The sea levels are going to go up, 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 up. We're going to be dead. We're all gonna fucking die unless we do something. Do something, capital letters, fucking do something, motherfucker. Do it now. Now we have to save the world. Now. Are you with me? Or do you want to die? Are you with me? Or do you want to kill the planet? Are you with me? Are you a good person? Or are you a bad person? See what I'm saying? It's as simple as that. Because with this kind of hysteria, you get the political energy of your constituents to follow you right off a cliff, no matter how absurd your policy. Yeah. Because see, the more you rile up people, the more their brains shut down. I mean, you know it. You go to a football game and you're, egging on your team, and you start yelling insults at the opposing team. And maybe like on a regular day, if you took an IQ test, your IQs would be like, 100, 110, 120. But when you're there in the midst of that hysteria, yelling at the opposing team, at the fans of the opposing team, and calling the opposing players all kinds of horrible things and talking about their mother in the most ungracious manner, well, your IQ point's what? Dude, if you're cracking 70, that's a fucking miracle, right? Yeah. Because hysteria makes you stupid, but it makes you energetic. It makes you do shit that you ordinarily wouldn't. And that's the whole point of climate hysteria. It's to make people stupid. Ironically, for all their hatred of populism, it's populism that they're applying. They are doing something that makes everybody's brain shut down. And no amount of argument and no amount of sense will crack through it. And have we noticed that lately? Let me hear chat like real quick. Let me go to chat. Hit me with a +1 if this reminds you of anybody. Maybe somebody who's all in favor of taking some experimental medication and all against taking a quote unquote horse dewormer. Give me a +1 if you know what the fuck I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, these fuckers, man. That's what they're doing. Okay? Riling people up to get their votes. Climate change hysteria goads countries into massive but needless expenditures to the political benefit of those, quote, sounding the alarm. Of course, of course. See, there are 435 Congress people in the US House of Representatives. Now, if you're there and you're a responsible fellow, you're there and you're just like responsible and you want to help your constituents and help the country and you're a decent dude, right? You're going to be fairly moderate, fairly calm. You're going to be pushing your little bill to fix some little corner of your, the place where you represent and so forth, right? I mean, you're going to be like just the regular guy, right? But if you get all hysterical about climate change, right? You get all these people following you. You get all these votes, and that turns into political power in a democracy. This is demagoguery, basically. The thing that Socrates warned us about, 2,500 years ago, or however long it was ago. See, this is not new. This is old as the hills. It's demagoguery. See, to get everybody to agree to crazy shit so that they get more political power. That's the whole point of this shit. Now, green energy is corrupt, inefficient, and dependent on arbitraging government subsidies and disincentives, making a great deal of money for corrupt players. This is the truth, okay? And I'm telling you because I worked in the solar energy business. And when I got into the solar energy business, I thought, this is fantastic, man. I'm going to make money and I'm going to be doing good, And that's how fucking naive I was. I'm going to make, get into the solar energy business, make a shit ton of money, and I'm going to be doing good by the environment. I'm going to be eliminating that ugly pollution and all that carbon shit. And I'm going to be installing these great solar panels all over the fucking place. And it's going to be a fucking brilliant idea, right? That was my idea when I walked into the business. Because what was happening was that in Chile, there was an opportunity to arbitrage the regulatory framework to make a considerable amount of money, okay? I'm not going to go into the specifics because it's long and tedious, but just take my word for it. The law in Chile, so far as energy production was concerned, was designed so that it would help out small energy producers. And because solar panels have a linear growth in energy output, that is, if you have one solar panel, you have X amount of energy. If you have two solar panels, you have double that amount of energy output, right? Well, because of that, you could arbitrage the regulatory framework in Chile. Okay, I'm not going to go into specifics, just take my word for it. And as I got into it, I realized that this was a very lucrative business, absolutely, but it depended on these government regulations. See, number one. And number two, the production of these solar panels was incredibly detrimental to the environment. But of course, it wasn't the environment of Chile. No, it was the environment of fucking China. That was where the real horror show of environmental impact was going on, in fucking China. And, you look at electric cars and all the rest of it, it's what's known as a long tailpipe. Electric cars, oh yeah, they're zero emission. But what's going on is that power plant has to produce a lot more fucking energy in order to get the electricity into the Tesla or whatever the fuck. And on top of that, the electrical car is not so efficient as the internal combustion engine, okay? The engine itself is, but the manner by which you get the newtons into the car is not. See? And that's a fact. And there's something else going on, of course, that most, if not all, of these green energy companies, they are not making money off of their product. They are making money off of government mechanisms to incentivize green energy. And the classic example is Tesla. Tesla does not make money from selling cars. Tesla makes money by selling carbon credits to other companies. Because Tesla, its automobiles, they don't produce any CO2, right? They're electric. That's the whole point. And so Tesla as a company accumulates carbon credits. And what are carbon credits? They're an arbitrary measure created by government agencies. And Tesla takes these carbon credits that it earns, that it receives because of its car production and sells them to environmentally more damaging companies, companies that produce CO2. And the companies that produce CO2 buy these carbon credits, and they view it simply as a tax, because that's what it is. It's a tax. And so they pay for these carbon credits and continue about their business. And they just write off the carbon credit as a tax. But Tesla books that money as a profit. Was the CO2 reduced? No, it was not. See, because the Tesla operates on electricity. And who is producing that electricity? The electrical power generating station that burns coal. And that coal burning station, right? It has to buy carbon credits from somebody, buys them from Tesla. So you see what's going on? It's just the government moving things around. And so you have this company, Tesla, that seems to be very successful. It's $1 trillion company, as I understand it. I actually haven't checked out its market capitalization as of late, but I'll just assume that, right? It's a very successful company. The last I checked, it was bigger. Its market capitalization was greater than the next 9 automakers combined, which is fucking insane, until you realize that it's a big fucking scam. They don't make money on their fucking cars. They make it off of this government regulation. And the other companies that have to pay Tesla for these carbon credits just view the whole operation as just a tax. They just write it off. They don't give a fuck, and they don't change anything. Of course not. They're not incentivized to. You see what's going on? Okay. Bottom line, climate change is fundamentally conservative and hysterical ideology that twists science for political and financial gains and bears no resemblance to reality. These guys are freaking out over literally nothing. And when you stop them and you say, look, the world will change, but it might actually be a better place, they just stop up their ears, close their eyes, shut, and start going, la, 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 la. That's what's going on with these fucking people. They don't want to see reality because they don't want change, because they're children. I'm talking about I'm talking about the followers of this shit, okay? I'm talking about all the bien pensant little fucksticks who went to a good liberal arts college, right? They're the ones who refuse to accept change and refuse to consider the fact that global warming might actually be good for the biosphere. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? We want a healthy planet, a healthy biosphere, right? Not the actual planet itself. The actual planet is fucking rock, right? We want the biosphere, the shit that's surrounding the planet, the atmosphere and all the living life on the surface of the planet. We want that to flourish, right? I mean, that's the whole fucking point of this fucking shit, right? For the biosphere, for the living organisms to flourish. A slightly higher temperature with less glaciers and Arctic ice would mean, of course, more habitable land. It would mean more precipitation, which would mean more biodiversity, more health in the ecology, more living organisms. This is a good thing, right? Isn't that what we want? No, they don't want that. They don't want that. They want the world in amber. They are conservative. Again, I'm not saying in the political sense. I'm talking in the sense of mentality. I've noticed that politically conservative people tend to be highly adaptive, and politically liberal people tend to be extremely conservative, i.e. they don't want change. They don't want change at all because they can't adapt. And that's the basic problem with liberals. That's the basic problem with these climate change hysterics. These people cannot accept change. They don't want change. And they lashed out and they try to use government to dip the world in amber. And what happens to an organism that is dipped in amber? It dies. Obviously. Yeah. It dies. And that's what they basically want for the earth. They want it to be the same forever. They want to kill it. They want it dipped in amber. They don't want it to fucking change at all. Okay? If you understand that, then you understand these fucking people. If you understand this, then dude, You understand that ultimately, the people leading this shit, they want to take advantage of this shit and make as much money for themselves as possible and gain as much power as possible. And the people following them are fools and children. You look at their data, because this is this report. It's their data. And you realize it's not that big of a deal. It's a trivial deal if you get right down to it. Let me just flip to the pertinent, let me get to the pertinent section. See the key points, okay, that I outlined here. This is it. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 6 points. These are the 6 points. And ultimately, it's not going to fucking change a fucking thing, okay? And on top of that, this UN report on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, right? Well, see, ultimately, the Chinese are not on board with any fucking measure that these fuckers plan on taking. So the whole fucking thing is moot, see? If China and the developing countries account for 60% of global CO2 emissions, then anything else that the other 30% are on board with is not going to make a licking fucking difference. But it'll mean that all of us in the developed nations will have to pay. We'll have to inconvenience ourselves. We'll have to cut back on things that we actually want. We will have to suffer. For what? I mean, that's the question here. What are we going to be suffering for? Because we're not going to make any fucking difference. And not allowing us to eat meat because the cows' methane, the farts of the cows creates greenhouse gases or whatever the fuck. Who gives a shit? It doesn't fucking change a fucking thing. And yet these morons, these fucking retards, are actually changing their economy in order to comply with this bullshit. And it's the same fucking thing as the goddamn vaccine, the same fucking thing as the whole COVID bullshit. Science twisted in order to achieve a political end. This climate change bullshit is the next stage of these fuckers' desire to control every facet of your life and mine. These fuckers, right? They said it. They've announced it, that climate change is the next big thing, okay? And that we have to make all the sacrifices necessary so that, the world is a better place, and that we combat climate change. Mm-hmm. And do they make any effort to get China to change, to get Africa to change, or Latin America to change? Fuck no. It's the dumb Europeans. It's the dumb Australians. Well, the poor totalitarian Australians at this point. I mean, those fuckers literally live in a prison colony. Yeah, that's what that fucking place is now, isn't it? Australians, you there? You listening? Or is Big Daddy government in Australia not letting you listen to battle CRP? But if you're there from Australia, hit me with a +A and blink twice if you can. If you can hear me properly, okay? But anyway, the rest of the world, the developed world, the first world, or whatever you want to call it, we're the ones who are going to be paying for this shit. And in the end of the day, we're not the ones responsible for it. And it's just so fucking frustrating that, how can I put it? Obviously, bad players, bad people with ill intentions have convinced so many fundamentally decent people of lies. And that's the thing that I find just deeply troubling. Because look, we look at a lot of these people who are pro-climate and pro-vaccine and pro doing whatever is necessary to end COVID, right? They're not bad people. Now, this is something that we have to really be aware of. These are not bad people. They're not ill-intentioned people. I'm talking about the normies, okay? I'm talking about the regular people who hear the news, who hear about this climate change stuff, who hear about these vaccines, and they want to do the right thing. You know, back in March of 2020, when they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? And everybody was on board. It took very little cajoling to get people on board. And why is that? What, do you think that everybody's like stupid? They're all sheep? No, they're not sheep. What it is that most people, you will find the vast majority of people are good and decent, and they want to do what's right. And they want to listen to leaders who tell them, this path, this is the right path, and we should all follow this path. And these normies, as sometimes we dismissively call them, they want to do the right thing. They don't want to hurt their fellow man. On the contrary, they're good and decent people. And they work hard, and they try to raise their children right, and they have no ill intention in their hearts. And when they are asked to make sacrifices, they will be happy to do so, because they are honest, good, God-fearing people. But low people, low bastards who want to gain power, who want to gain money, who want to aggrandize their egos, they take advantage of these normies. They take advantage of these good and decent people. Rotten, ugly people whose souls are black as night. They take advantage of the normies and convince them of things that are lies for their own benefit. Because a lot of these leaders, it's not even that they want money or power even. What they want is for other people to suffer. It's hard to believe, but that's what they want. They enjoy it. You guys saw that premier, that health official from New South Wales or Victoria, wherever the fuck, that lady who was like so angry. She was like, arr. She was listening to a question. She was like, listening to a question. And she was like, arr, She's like a blonde lady with a real frown, like a real just right. And the second she got the gist of the question, she said, yes, we're going to have to lock everybody down. Yes, they're going to be like prisoners in their own home. It's going to be great. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, hit me with a +1 if you saw a video of that woman. Her eyes lit up. They lit up like fireworks in the night when she had this notion that, oh, yeah, everybody's going to be in fucking prison and I'm going to be the one in charge, the one in telling them what to do. She was thrilled. Yeah, because these fuckers get off on that. They get off on hurting other people and controlling other people, locking them up. Bottom line, we've got sociopaths running the show, okay? And they use whatever is at their disposal to frighten people into doing what they want. You see, they don't want people to be at peace and calm and pursuing their lives. No. They don't want that. They want them scared so that they can control them, so that they get more power, more money, and so that they actually see the people suffer. Before I didn't quite believe it, but I've come to the conclusion, especially over the last 20 odd months, that these people fundamentally get off on having normal people suffer. They get off on it. They get off on it like, a junkie gets off on heroin. They love it. They love to see good, hardworking, decent people suffer. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm just a little. It's depressing to realize that the people who are your leaders, duly elected leaders, are sadistic fucks who just want to scare the shit out of people so that they get more power, more money, more control over your lives. This was a shorter presentation than usual. So because of it, I'm going to have like more, a longer Q&A session, and I'm going to post the link on the Patreon webinar edition, right? 48 people are watching it now. I just posted it, guys. You should see it there, and I'll post it again so you guys notice it. Okay, there you guys go. And I'm looking forward to taking questions and comments. Yeah, read the report, read the sixth assessment, and you can come to your own conclusions. You know, and what's interesting to me is that the way the report is written, they're trying desperately to frame it in the most negative light. But you look at the actual data and it's not that bad at all. And it's actually kind of trivial, and which is the point. See, the idea that this is going to be some sort of catastrophe is laughable. And to call it or claim it or believe that it's going to be a catastrophe is laughable. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, to blame it all on the West, on the European Union and the Western democracies of North America, it's just wrong, because they're not responsible. The people responsible for CO2 emissions from industrial processes are principally China and the underdeveloped nations. They're the ones who should be pushed into cutting back on CO2. But the leaders in the West find it much more advantageous to scare their own citizens so that they can get their citizens to make sacrifices while the nation, the politicians get the benefits. Because for a politician, it's a hard thing to go to China and convince the Chinese to do something, but it's an easy thing to scare the shit out of their own people and to get them to sign away their rights, to eat the bug, to live in the pod. You know the story. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, guys, in the webinar, I posted the link there, the StreamYard link. So join up whenever you want to. Anybody who has a question or a comment. I'm waiting up. That's kind of weird. I'm not sure if people aren't seeing. Hang on a second. Because I'm on a different account. And so I'm trying to, this is weird. Say, hang on just a second here. You're gonna have to bear with me while I figure this shit out. Because apparently in the chat, in the stream, in the what you call it, the stream for my Patreon subscribers, they're not actually seeing me chat, which is fucking weird. Okay, so give me just a second. Hang on. Sorry about this. I don't quite know what's happening. Okay, guys, guys on Patreon, go to my Patreon page, and I just posted the link there so that you can join in the StreamYards, because I've been posting it repeatedly on the live chat, and you guys don't seem to be seeing me. Oh, I get it. I know the problem now. What's going on is that you guys don't see me because I'm not signed into the correct address on that stream, and it makes invisible any any link that you put there. YouTube does this. So just go to the Patreon page, the CRP Patreon page, and in the webinar number 76 link post, which is the latest one, I just did a quick edit, and it includes the StreamYard link. Okay, sorry about that. It can't be helped. Let me try. Oh, there we go. People are popping in now. Okay, great. Great. Let me bring in Rihard, who's the first person here. Hey, Rihard, how's it going? I can't hear you, Rihard. You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no. Hi, thanks for asking. Doing well. Today I have two questions. One is how to get a good job in Ukraine. It can be also remotely.
Well, if you can work remotely, then you don't need a job in Ukraine, right?
I mean, if you really want to get the job in Ukraine, for example.
I wouldn't actually know. I mean, that unfortunately, you're on your own. Because moving to Ukraine, which I highly advise, it's the ideal place for somebody who works remotely, who is getting like a salary in the West, because your dollar or your euro does very well here in Ukraine because it's a poor country. And if right now I live in Kharkov, as many of you know, and in Kharkov, it's the second largest city of Ukraine, and the cost of living is very, very low. I mean, for like $2,000, you live exceptionally well. Okay, $2,000 a month, you live exceptionally well. And my own expenses, and I've got 2 kids in school, gym membership. I have my own office and my own apartment. The whole thing is running me about $4,500 just living here with all of that I explained, and in good private schools and the whole 9 yards. Okay, and so living the whole point is that if you can work remotely, you want to go to an underdeveloped country or a poor country because your dollar will go farther. If you are poor, then of course you want to go to a rich country, a rich Western country like Germany or the Netherlands or the US, because they will support you. See, I mean, that's the thing. Now, where to find a job in Ukraine, I have no idea. I mean, yeah, that's on you. Okay, I can only point you in the direction and where to go. What's your next question?
Next one was when you had talk about having a little fear that the USA might bomb China. I had a counter question that, but have you also had idea that China has been prepared something for a nuclear attack coming from
you're gonna have to structure your question so that it's fluid, because I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay. Do you think China has prepared for a nuclear attack coming from the USA? So after the launch, Chinese hackers detonate their launching facilities, or
yeah, of course. Every country has contingency plans for a nuclear war, assuming that they have nuclear weapons themselves. I mean, yeah, every country has their own contingency plan for nuclear war, and what those are, it's each country, and I wouldn't know. I mean, it's look. If we go into the part of nuclear war, anything can happen. It's completely unpredictable. Okay. And it would become an emotional issue too, because it would depend on what got bombed and what the other side would do as a reaction to that. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what would happen.
Okay, but still, thank you very much, and
my pleasure. Yeah, you take it easy. All the best. Hey, Bill, how's it going? Okay, Bill, you're gonna have to fix your sound, and I'm muting you. Okay. I'm muting Bill until he straightens out his problems. Sharma, how's it going?
It's good, Coach. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's on your mind?
So the proposition you had about a different, separate, moving to like a different continent while all of this thing is happening is quite popular. But the thing that's the problem is, if this problem is happening globally, eventually wherever you move, that place will also have these kind of regimes. So
no. There's always going to be some place where you don't have these issues. Okay. And what will happen is also, like, for instance, in Eastern Europe, they're very resistant to anything that's that's communistic, like what's going on in the West right now. And that's why they're not buying into the bullshit. I was actually talking to somebody on Friday at my gym about the whole COVID vaccine thing. And here in Ukraine, about 10% of the people have taken the vaccine, and most of the others are like, why would I bother? And this seems very weird. They look at it very skeptically. And so you have to understand that most people are very skeptical. And again, it's the poorer countries and the countries that have gone through a socialist communist phase that don't bow down to this bullshit, that they don't buy it at all. And the great part about a poor country is that because it's poor, corrupt pharmaceutical companies, for instance, will not be able to make any inroads. Because you see, the government doesn't have the money to buy 40 million vaccination regimes for all the people here in Ukraine. It's just not, it doesn't have the money for it. And so it won't buy them. And so the pharmaceutical companies say, oh, then we won't bother. And so the people, they have to out of pocket buy the vaccine. And they say, why would I bother buying the vaccine? It's not worth it. The risk reward is zero. And so I think that part of the problem, insofar as the vaccination is concerned, is the fact that it's being subsidized by the governments. So, yeah. But anyway, to go back to your original point, will this bullshit spread to other countries? No, there's always going to be countries that aren't going to be down with this bullshit. And those are going to be the countries that are culturally have more self-respect. They have more self-respect and more confidence in their own culture. Countries like Hungary, countries like Japan, they're just not going to be down for all the bullshit. Okay. And so, yeah, you just have to find that country. Anything else?
Yeah. So in my case, I don't think I could move into the poor country. What do you think would be a possible way, like escaping forward, conquering this while you are stuck, let's say, in a Western democracy?
I don't understand your question.
So non-compliance, is that an option, or how
Sure.
do you think?
Absolutely.
How do you think you can go about it?
Well, if you feel that some demand is being made of you that is onerous, that is illegitimate, that's wrong, just don't put up with it. Simple as that. And if it costs you your job, there are other jobs. Simple as that. And if it means that you get ostracized from the society you're in, which is what's going to happen to people in Australia, especially, well, you're just going to have to toughen it out. Simple as that. I mean, life is not easy. And sometimes you have these moments that are very, very difficult, and you have to show whether you have balls or not. Okay. And if you don't have the balls to put up with, to resist rather, something egregious, then you deserve your fate. Okay. I mean, look, everybody always talks about what they would do if they were like in Nazi Germany. Okay. It's happening. So what are you going to do? Are you just going to like roll over? I mean, I read so many stories and comments of people saying that, oh yeah, I'm against the jab, but they threatened my job, and so I took it. Well, then you're a fucking pussy. So, I don't want to have anything to do with you because you said one thing and that you were going to resist and all the rest of it. But when the chips came down and they threatened your job, which is trivial, you caved. How can anybody respect a person like that? All their principles were all just so much bullshit. Bodily autonomy, but oh my goodness, I'm not going to have money to buy my fucking video game, so I'll knuckle under. Okay. I mean, irrespective of what you think of the vaccine, I think that the whole issue of getting the vaccine so you can get the passport so you can enjoy life is despicable. It's really like rape. Okay. It really is. It's like, hey, honey, you're a great secretary, but if you don't let me stick my dick into you, then you're not going to keep your job. It's the same fucking thing, isn't it?
No, I agree with you. The mere fact that you are not allowed to produce and have your own keep, this is insane. But my thinking is, if the military is against you, what chance do you stand? And what would you do if
leave? Okay? It's not that fucking hard. Look, I anticipated something like this quite some time ago. And that's why I set up my shit in this country. Okay? This country, nobody's going to hassle me. Nobody's going to bother me. That's why I came here. Okay? It's a great out of the way place. So you see what I'm saying? There are other such places. Okay? There are places like in Latin America and Central America. Panama is a great place. You know, it's out of the way, but it's always going to be kind of like central. You know what I mean? And they leave you alone. So long as you don't break any law and don't make a hassle and a nuisance of yourself, you're perfectly fine. Okay. And you just have to look. You have to have an open mind. You cannot expect everybody to hold your fucking hand while you do something. You got to go and live your life. And you make mistakes, you fall on your face, well, you just get up and continue going. But you cannot expect everybody to hold your hand. Okay?
Okay, coach.
Okay. Now, Bill, I'm bringing you back. Did you fix your sound issues? Take it easy, Sharma. All the best. Okay, Bill, your sound issues, man.
Hey, coach. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's up? What's on your mind?
Hey, nothing on my mind. I was just trying to help you get your stuff together. I was just trying to help you get your stuff together. I don't have any question for you. Great topic.
You're going to help me get my stuff together. What does that mean exactly?
About 10 minutes ago when you were switching, when you had the little hiccup.
Oh, okay.
Your end.
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah. Great talk, but I don't have anything to discuss right now.
Okay. Well, then you take it easy. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good one.
Take it easy. Thanks very much for your offer for help. I appreciate it. Hey, Shannon, how's it going?
Good. Great presentation as usual. You know,
oh, thank you.
It's pretty very pertinent to me on the.
I can hardly hear you. I can hardly hear you. Yeah, I can hardly hear you.
I'll try to talk louder. I'm on a mobile. Okay. Maybe this is not going to work. Fine.
Okay, well, go ahead. What's on your mind? Yeah, you just have to bring it closer to use. Go ahead.
Okay, let me do that. I agree with you on I've always been suspect of the climate change arguments, and I haven't really studied all the details. I did follow this lawsuit by this. I think his name was Michael Mann or something. He was one of the big proponents about climate change at the University of Pennsylvania. He's the one that had the idea of the hockey stick. How as you things are just going to work. And he brought a suit against a Canadian journalist who challenged it and essentially proved that he was falsifying the data. So I've been suspect of it all along. But which it doesn't take much research to decide that, I guess. But the question in my mind, and probably is the pertinent thing for even like the fellow you were just talking with a moment ago, how does one resist this? I mean, how does, I guess, expose the truth, I guess, is one thing. But down on a personal level, like I have a son who's just being, I think is going to be accepted to a top Ivy League school, and they're requiring that he be vaccinated. I mean, this is not climate change, but it's still the overbearing establishment on things. And so it's not personal exactly to me, but obviously it's very personal because it's my son. And his
I can tell you about the school issue. The school issue. That's actually pretty easy. If they have any kind of vaccine mandate right now, I think the smart thing would be to just say that, you want to take a year off and just freeze your enrollment. I don't know what it's called, just like to just drop out and just freeze it for a year, or if you get accepted, you can defer it for a year or whatever. Okay. Yeah. The smart thing would be to defer it for a year. Okay. In a year's time, this is all going to go away, because what will happen is that the negative side effects will be it won't be possible to hide them anymore. Okay. And so look, you got to understand, see, if you decide not to get vaccinated now, you can always get vaccinated later. But a person who's been vaccinated now, they have no plan B. That's it. Okay. I personally think that the negative outcomes of the vaccine are just going to be piling up, and eventually it'll just reach a tipping point where it can't be hidden anymore. Because I think a lot of the things that are going on is that they're kind of like hiding and misrepresenting what's going on. But you see every day, you see somebody had a heart attack every fucking day, and young people. I mean, people in their 30s, their 20s, their teens. This is not normal. Bullshit that it's because people are smoking too much dope, because that's the new excuse that they're trotting out, that it's because people are smoking so much marijuana that that's why it's causing all these heart attacks. That's a lie. That's just a blatant misinformation, manipulative lie to distract from the fact that we all know what the fuck is going on, right? So insofar as students are concerned, if you have a vaccine mandate, and I'm saying this not just to you, but to everybody listening, if you have a vaccine mandate and you're a student, just defer for a year. You know, in a year's time, in September of 2022, there's going to be a radically different vibe to this whole issue, because, and it's quickly piling up, because people are realizing that there's something very rotten in Denmark. Okay, so yeah, that's my thinking.
Yeah, I'm suspect of it that there a lot of the incidents of the yellow cards, as they call it in the UK, are not being reported because I watched a video of Eric Clapton talking about the severe reaction to it. And he's a celebrity, so he can get some publicity of it. I think there are probably a lot of others that may have similar situations that we never.
And they trashed him.
And I'm not anti-vax. I mean,
I'm not anti-vax either. Look, I just want to make it really clear. I'm pro-vaccination. I think that vaccines for smallpox, for polio, for all kinds of different diseases are A-okay, number one. My kids have all of their shots insofar as the traditional vaccines are concerned. Insofar as any kind of new vaccine, any kind of new technology, any kind of new drug that's not been tested, that nobody knows the long-term side effects, they don't even know the medium-term side effects, I refuse. Simple as that. Out of just caution, just simple, honest caution. Simple as that.
No, I agree. I mean, for this vaccine, I mean, I see it as a moral hazard in a way because there was no liability, or the liability was waived to the manufacturers. The prize was $1 trillion prize. They waived the normal testing and the clinical tests and so on. So, I mean, if it's proven to work over no greater risk over the next few years, fine. I'll be glad. I'll be glad to take it. But right now, I don't want to be forced to take it. And more so, I don't want my kid to be forced to take it.
So tell your kid that the best way to do it is to defer for a year. Okay. And he can do other stuff for that year. Yeah,
absolutely. So, well, thank you, Coach. Great.
Take it easy, Shannon. Thank you. Take care. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, Stephen, how's it going? Let me get you there. Stephen, you there?
Is it me?
Yeah. How's it going?
Oh, I didn't expect to be on. I just happened to be here. I'm from Melbourne, actually.
Oh, how's life in prison? You know? Yeah. How's life in Australia prison? What do they call it? Australauschwitz or something like that. A mishmash of Auschwitz and Australia. You know, I forget what it was, but yeah, you guys are in like heavy duty lockdown. You can't even leave your own country. What the hell?
Well, I can't leave 5 kilometres actually, and there's a curfew on. It's 2:30 in the morning at the moment, but it's been a curfew since 9 p.m.
Because everybody knows that the COVID vaccine is especially prevalent at nighttime. Yeah. It's a night owl. That's the word I hear on that particular virus. Bullshit.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Yep. As I said, you cannot get out of Australia.
Nobody's resisting in Australia. What the fuck is that all about?
Well, if you resist, you can have the police knock you over. If you go to the protests, they can hit you with plastic bullets and pepper sprays and massive fines. And what does it achieve? You can get knocked over by police horses and all this kind of stuff. So you can't even post on media without the risk of them coming and knocking down the door and taking you away.
Yeah, I'm shocked how quickly Australia descended into totalitarianism. I will never get over it, you know? And with what glee Australian leaders are just pouncing on the fact that they have unlimited authority. I find it remarkable. Yeah. Anyway, Stephen, what's on your mind?
Oh, nothing really. I was just happened to be sitting here, but the terrible thing is that it's so indefinite. Like there's no, all these restrictions and things are just going to be on until some arbitrary percentage vaccination comes in, and that may be 70% or 80%, but you never see that number. That could be forever. So we're just sitting here waiting and knowing that who never know how long we'll be stuck. So it's so frustrating and not being able to get out of Australia anyway. So that's
because as I understand it, you have to apply to leave, and only for very specific circumstances, and they can deny you. It's just absurd, man. I'm sorry, it's just crazy that you can't leave.
Ordinary people effectively can't get out, and there's actually 40,000 Australians waiting to get back in, which is the other interesting thing. They can't even
I actually understand not allowing people to come back in. It's the leaving that I don't understand. What's the rationale?
Well, they're afraid they want to come back afterwards, and then it'll put extra strain on the quarantine.
I don't get it. I don't get it. But look, this is incredibly serious, and the thing that I find deeply, deeply concerning and just dispiriting is how relatively little resistance there's been. There have been some protests and the trucker strike. By the way, how has that trucker strike affected you insofar as your shopping is concerned? Have you noticed the lack of food?
Zero effect. Yeah, nothing at all. Everything's the same in the supermarkets. There's no. It's not even being publicised, actually. So I don't.
Oh no.
It's not on the news. So they may have been suppressing it, but there's no physical effect in the supermarkets. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they have most definitely been suppressing the news on the mainstream media in Australia. But I was wondering if there were some knock-on effects, lack of goods in supermarkets, not enough gasoline at the pumps, that sort of thing.
No signs of that at all. So at this stage,
it's depressing. Anyway, Stephen, anything else on your mind?
Talking to you. Bye.
No, my pleasure, man. You take it easy. And strength, all my strength to you, and just resist the bastards. Don't let the bastards bring you down, okay?
Yeah.
Take it easy. Thomas, how's it going?
Hi there. I'm doing good.
What's on your mind, my man?
So right now I'm studying computer science.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the last semester I have, and when I start working, I'll be able to work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about traveling around, moving around, maybe over a few weeks, maybe over a few months, trying to figure out where I want to stay long term.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice for how I figure that out when I land there?
Where are you?
What you should do? I'm in Norway.
You're in Norway.
Yeah.
Okay. What's life like in Norway?
It's good. I mean,
and all the restrictions and whatnot?
There's no restrictions. Almost.
No restriction. Okay.
You can't have like a big concert.
Okay. What about passport vaccines and mandatory vaccinations?
It's not mandatory.
Okay.
If you want to come back into the country, if you're fully vaccinated, you can just come right in. But if you haven't been vaccinated, you need to be in quarantine for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
Okay.
But
tell me.
But I sort of have the sense that if things start being cracked down, Norwegians won't resist. So
nobody's resisting. No, because bottom line, what's going on is that people have had such comfortable lives that they don't know how to resist. Simple as that. And I think also the problem is a lot of Zoomers and millennials and even Gen Xers have had such a protected and sheltered life, and their parents always taking care of so many problems, and they've gotten so used to turning to authority to get what they want that they can't compute when authority turns on them, and which is the current problem. And so they're not resisting. And I think it's a tragedy. Yeah. I think that it's just a tragedy all around. Anyway, to go back to your question, like I said before, if you can work remotely, and earn a decent living, you want to be living in a cheap country, a cheap, comfortable country that has things that you might potentially want. I mean, what would you want? You want to have a nice place to live and access to attractive women and a safe environment. And so you have to start, prioritizing what are the things that you want. It's simple. Like, for instance, if I were to prioritize things, I'd like to live in a cold climate, that's inexpensive, because I prefer cold climate to hot climate, in a place that's inexpensive and cheap to live, and where crime is relatively low, and that stuff. And that's why I'm in Ukraine. I mean, for me, Ukraine ticks all the boxes, right? And we're never going to have the kind of ethnic conflict that is so prevalent in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and increasingly more in the rest of Europe, because there are no Black people and there are no Middle Easterners, or very few. And the reason is because Ukraine is poor. And so refugees from those countries, they don't come to Ukraine because they're not going to get anything. See? And that's a key issue. See? And there are occasional Black people and occasional Arab people where I live, because there are a lot of universities here. And these Black people and Middle Eastern people, they are basically rich from their own countries, and they've come here to study, and then they're going back. Okay? I mean, they're just students here, temporarily. And because of this, because of the lack of diversity, it's very safe. It's very safe. You're relaxed. You're not stressed out. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I went with my kids. We went to Shevchenko Park, which is near where I live, and we went to this like aquarium called Nemo. It has like fish and dolphins and all kinds of crap, right? And we went there, and the kids left their scooters. They have these little, two-wheel scooters. They just left them there by the entrance. And they forgot where they left them, because we went in to see the lizard section, the lizard and fish section. We were there for like a long time, because what happened was that we got there just as the attendants were feeding the lizards and the iguanas and the chameleons and all these little animals. And so the kids were like, oh wow, and watching the little animals eating their food was so cool, right? And the attendants were very nice and let the kids actually pet a couple of these lizards and salamanders and whatnot, right? And we were there for quite a while. And then when we exited, we were like, where did we leave the scooters? And we had to like hunt around, and they were right there where we had left them. It's a high trust society. And you want to go to a high trust society. And paradoxically, a lot of times, poor countries that are ethnically homogenous tend to be a lot more high trust than multicultural societies with a lot of disparate ethnic groups. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a reality. And so you have to like figure out where you want to go. But again, if you're going to be working remotely for a European firm, I assume that that's your intention, right? You're going to get paid very well. And if you get paid very well, your euro is going to go a lot farther in a poor country than a rich country. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, that's my suggestion.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm kind of wondering about that I haven't figured out is just where the tech people are going to be. Like at some point, people have left Silicon Valley.
They're going to be online. They're going to be online. Yeah. I mean, look, this remote working shit, when it started happening back in March of 2020, I knew that it was a huge change insofar as the real estate market. And I was fortunate. I had a couple of positions in commercial real estate, which I exited quickly. And that was very lucky because, see, nobody is going to be working in these big offices. Nobody is going to be spending all their time in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, in New York City, in London or Frankfurt or all the big European cities because it's too expensive. They're going to live in small, out-of-the-way places and occasionally travel to those big cities to have their meetings, and it'll be a lot cheaper. I mean, think about it. If you are living in a small town and you are saving an office in office expenses, say, just for the sake of argument, 1,000 euros a month, and your ticket to go to a city to visit somebody is, maybe a couple of €100 per trip, round trip, and the whole expenses of being there, then it's obviously going to be cheaper. You're going to work from home or work from a cheap town and then travel occasionally to that nexus, you know, in Frankfurt or Amsterdam or London or New York or Silicon Valley or wherever the hell, rather than live there. Living there is so expensive. It wears you down. And it's cheaper for the companies too, because they don't have to have these big offices. They can have this small little office with a couple of conference rooms, you know, and very small little conference rooms, and have people come in once in a while and go, you know, and everybody works from home. And basically the companies are going to be outsourcing the expense of the office to the workers. The workers are going to work and live at home. And that'll cause other problems into the future. And we're starting to see that already, very minor issues so far, but into the distant future. What I discovered as a writer working from home is that I started going a little bit nuts because I was either working constantly, like all the time, or I was procrastinating and not working, and because it was like always there. There was no division. And after, what was it? And starting in 2001, I realized that I needed a place to work and a place to live. Because if I worked and lived in the same place, it was like I never had any rest. I never had like a clear break. And more people are going to start to realize this, but that's in the future. Right now, everybody's all hunky-dory about this work from home shit. And they're going to keep on doing it, and it's going to expand. And the entire economy is going to start changing towards this. And it'll mean that nice little towns, the cute, picturesque little towns, are going to be places where people want to go. And remote workers such as yourself who are in IT, you're going to be able to move anywhere you want, and you'll be able to design the life that you want to live. So look at it in those terms. Yeah. As to where to go, that's up to you. Just travel around and see what you like.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anything else on your mind, man?
No, that's it. Have a good day.
Take it easy. Thanks very much. Hey, Jack, how's it going? Jack, you there?
Second.
Jack, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I know that you've talked about Russia before. Wouldn't one of the issues with moving to Russia be that if you have a business and you're in the West, your business is located in the West, couldn't they just take your wages or take over your business?
How?
Well, couldn't someone in the United States where I'm living, couldn't the government just prevent my wages going to Russia, or like the bank accounts, kind of like what you were talking about with PayPal and with the Duran channel? They just completely got rid of their PayPal account. Couldn't something like that happen if you?
Well, no, I mean, think of it logically. Okay, so you're an independent worker, right? And so you're incorporated. You have a little corporation that pays you a salary. Mm-hmm. And your clients pay your corporation. Your corporation is the throughway for your income, right?
Yeah.
And so you have your corporation incorporated in Delaware, say. You know, that's always a great place to go. You know, no state taxes and whatnot. And so your corporation, ABC Incorporated or ABC LLC, pays you a salary and pays you a salary to your bank account in the US, and you draw those funds with your debit card in Russia. Debit cards work in Russia, an ATM, any ATM, or you can, if you decide to become a resident in Russia, you can set up a bank account in Russia and have your salary from your bank account in the States just transfer money to your account in Russia. How would anybody touch that? See?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there are lots of ways to get around it. What was going on with the Duran was that, PayPal was their mechanism to receive funds from followers and subscribers and whatnot. And when they cut off PayPal, they all of a sudden had no recourse to getting their funds. See, and that was the problem. But what you call it, if you are working remotely, but you're living in Russia or living anywhere for that matter, you can just do everything in the States as you would normally, and you're just simply living someplace else, and you're just drawing the funds to that other country, and nobody's going to hassle you. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But what about like you kind of like what you talked about with the vaccine passports? If you don't have a vaccine passport, they could just eliminate your bank account. I mean, do you see?
I think that's going to happen. Yeah, that's going to happen. Well, see, they might do it to people who are dissidents, okay? But they're not going to do it to companies, corporations. And that's why you should set up a corporation. If you're an independent worker, you always want to be setting up a corporation. And you set up a corporation, and that way you're armored against any kind of arbitrary thing, because it's not you, it's the corporation. And therefore, nobody's going to do any kind of punitive measure against a company. See?
Okay.
Unless you, like, I don't know, do something really horrible like a terrorist act and they catch you in the act, well, then then that's a different story. But if you're just living your life and they start hassling people with the COVID vaccine, and they start, I think they will potentially start shutting down individuals' bank accounts, because they are unvaccinated, right? They're not going to do it to the corporation that is receiving funds. Okay, so you as a person might lose your bank account, but the company you own will not.
Yeah.
See, because it's a corporate account, and so because of
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. You see?
Yep.
Yeah. Think of it in those terms.
Okay.
But this only works for remote workers or people who are not salaried employees. People who are salaried employees, then they have an issue.
That's what I'm trying to set up. I'm trying to set up my own corporation. Currently, I'm working in accounting, but I would like to move elsewhere. So anyway, thank you for your words of wisdom, man. Really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for being on. Take it easy. Hey, Konstantin, you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's on your mind, my man?
Well, I'm from the Baltic states, Lithuania, and I can say what is happening in my country if you're interested.
Yeah, very interested. Please, go ahead.
Well, tomorrow we're going to initiate the vaccine passports in my country. And
Did you get
I
the
won't
shot?
be able... Nope.
You did? Yeah, okay.
I'm afraid of needles.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Chicken.
I also work as I work as a paramedic, but I'm also afraid of needles. So yeah.
You work as a paramedic.
Yes.
And not that you're afraid of needles, but you're in a very good position to know the effects of the shot, right? Have you seen any untoward effect?
Well, almost. There is like a how can I say this? From now on, every time we get a new call, a dispatch also checks if a person is vaccinated or not. That's a new thing, and it's like a hassle to go to like the elderly home where people have like strokes or heart attacks, because you like 9 times out of 10, like if they took a vaccine, like, come on, man. Like,
and they get strokes or heart attacks.
Yeah, yes, strokes or heart attacks. Like 9 times out of 10 because of the vaccine. So from tomorrow, I won't be able to get a haircut. I won't be able to go to the movies, to big shopping centers, and to theaters. So yeah, like my new hippie style haircut is growing. So
okay. What about your job? Do you keep your job?
Yes, because somehow my coworker got ill with a coronavirus, so they automatically assumed like I also got the disease, and I was quarantined, and then I did a test for antibodies.
Yeah.
I got 0, but I basically lied and said, yeah, I got it. So and they said, we checked that you got the antibodies. It's all okay, but sometime in the future you need to to say how many antibodies did you get. So I'm vaccinated.
Okay.
So yeah. But at first, my government said that unvaccinated can't even travel with a public transport. That's how bad it was. But there was a protest, and after that protest, people at least can travel with a public transport. Like, I can't go to the gym. The gym is like my hobby. Like, I'm frustrated. I don't know.
No, it just seems absurd. Yeah, it just seems.
Don't go
awful.
to Lithuania. Don't go. That's not a good country. No. Nope.
No, I'm not. I know. You know, I was actually supposed to go to Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia and Belarus this past summer, but circumstances arose that made it impossible for me to travel. That I had to do things here, and once I was able to, they started shutting down different borders, because it was sort of like, you know, in the springtime things seemed to be opening up. But then in the summertime, things started to be shut down. And I think now into the winter time, it's going to get worse and worse and worse as there are more COVID cases. And they're going to insist that it's pandemic of the unvaccinated, that the unvaccinated are to blame, and rather than ADE, antibody-dependent enhancement, or also VADE, which is a vaccine-assisted, I forget the exact term, VADE virus.
Really.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it doesn't matter. So anyway, the point is that, see, things are going to get worse, but eventually I think that my hope is that within the next 12 months, everybody sort of like snaps out of this. But on a personal level, number one, I'm not sure that they will snap out of it. I think they might just double down and make things worse. And number two, I personally am out of the way of this situation. And so I'm sort of like, I'm not indifferent to it, but it's not affecting me personally because I organize my life so that I'm in a place where nobody gives a shit about this stuff. Because that's the bottom line. Nobody cares here in Ukraine. See? I took some videotape, which I'm going to be using on future posts because I'm going to be reactivating my Gonzalo Lira channel in a little bit. But anyway, I took a whole bunch of videos, and you see all the people out in the park. I mean, tons of people. Nobody has a mask on. Everybody's just walking around, just relaxed, because everybody knows that it's just bullshit. And yeah, that's one of the advantages of living in a former communist country. They can spot bullshit, and they don't tolerate it.
Not in Lithuania.
Well, obviously not. Yeah, a poor former communist country. I think that's the issue. Yeah. Anything else on your mind, man?
Nope. Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Konstantin. You take it easy. Hey, Steven, how's it going? Steven, you there? Steven, you got to unmute yourself, man. Okay, Steven has not unmuted himself. I'm going to be winding down this presentation. Nobody asked me anything about the climate change. You know, I like prepared for this shit, right? And I think also that I might have done like a fairly dry presentation. I'm not sure. But bottom line, you know, just to circle back, as Jen Psaki will always say, to the whole issue. Steven, are you there? Hello, Steven. Okay, I'm gonna take you out of the stream and hang on. Yeah, Steven, if you sort out your mic issues, I'm happy to have you on, but you gotta unmute yourself. Okay. Anyway, to go back to the whole issue of climate change, it's just more bullshit, you know. And let me ask you something. Okay, chat. You know, how many of you are sick and tired of the bullshit? Hit me with a +1 if you're sick and tired of the bullshit, and hit me with 0 if you want more bullshit. How many want more bullshit? Hit me with a 0. And how many of you are sick of the bullshit? Hit me with a +1. Chat will have to catch up. Well, I'll wait for you guys to catch up, but I'm just so tired of it. it's just all the time. And the aim is always the fucking same, to make some money or to gain a little bit of power. Do you know why they have been talking of ivermectin as a horse dewormer? Do you know why? Ivermectin, the World Health Organization considers ivermectin an essential medication. It has cured so many diseases, dengue fever, malaria, all kinds of shit that happens in tropical and subtropical climates, especially in Africa. You know, it's helped millions of people. It's been given out at least 4 billion times. But the problem with ivermectin is, number one, the patent expired long ago, so nobody's making any money. It's just a generic drug, number one. And number two, you see, the emergency use authorization for a lot of the vaccines, right, depends on there not being any kind of alternative medication for the COVID virus. If there is an alternate medication for the COVID virus, then the emergency use authorization for the vaccines would be rescinded. And you got to keep in mind, the vaccines are all dependent on the emergency use authorization. None of them have gotten FDA approval. And you think that some of them got FDA approval like a couple of weeks ago, they announced it was a big to-do. They didn't. It was a sleight of hand. If you actually read it, you realize that they didn't give it, the Pfizer vaccine or any of the others, FDA approval. They just extended the emergency use authorization. So these companies, they have their paid shills crapping all over ivermectin and calling it a horse dewormer when it is a legitimate medication. And of course it has uses in animal husbandry. Of course it does. There are lots of medications that are used for livestock. But for instance, you would never say that penicillin is a chicken antibacterial drug. Would you call penicillin a poultry antibacterial drug? No, you wouldn't. Is it used on poultry to kill bacteria? And yes, it is. But you see what's going on here. It's just bullshit in order to continue this emergency use authorization. That's the whole point of it. It's lies. It's bullshit. And they push this bullshit just to make fucking money. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about a fuck about anybody. And the politicians, see, they're going to get their payback from the pharma companies, because there's this revolving door where a politician, he exits the public service or so-called public service, and he lands this great little cushy job at some pharmaceutical company, or he gets a big old book deal, and it's just a legalized payoff. That's what's going on. It's corrupted. It's a corrupted system, okay? And so these people, they want money, they want their power, they want their prestige. They don't give a shit about people, okay? And they mislabel, they denigrate, that's the word. They denigrate things that are legitimately useful rather, for the sake of continuing with their money-making schemes. They do not care about curing people. Goldman Sachs said it best. In one of their presentations, they asked, is curing people a sustainable business model? And the answer, of course, is no. A sustainable business model is creating consistent customers, repeat customers. And so what you want is to have a disease that becomes a chronic illness. You don't want to cure it. You want it to be chronic. That way they keep on buying your pills, buying your treatments over and over and over again. And that's what's going on. It's so fucking simple. And they did it with pharma, and now they're doing it with climate change. See? Climate change is a big scam. And I know this business. I was involved in it, doing the solar energy shit. And when I got into it, I thought, man, this is going to be great. I'm going to be helping the environment and making some money and all the rest of it. I mean, I was like all, bushy-tailed and all eager to get into this business. And in less than a year, I realized it was a big old fucking scam. And by that time, I'd invested so much time and effort into it that I had to continue to the bitter end. And I made money off the fucking thing, sure. But it was dishonest money. Well, let's face facts. Nothing of any utility was created. It was just arbitraging and using government regulations, i.e., making money off government rules that made everything less efficient. That's what was going on. I worked in this business from 2013 to 2016. I made a lot of money. But like I said, it was dishonest money. See? So you got to understand what's going on. You got to understand what's going on. All this is bullshit. Bullshit. And they're setting up climate change to use as another way to make money, another way to control people, another way to make people's lives miserable. They want to do that, just as they're doing it with COVID and the vaccine. Okay? You got to understand that. And you got to resist it. Yeah. So anyway, I've been babbling on for a couple of hours. I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.